never been done before.
We the people tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. We the people are the driver. The government is the car. And we decide where it should go and by what route to do. We the people are free. And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited.
Well, howdy, folks. How are you? It's been one of those days today. If you have friends in Italy, can I ask you, please send them a warning. Get the hell out of Italy. Mount Etna, as you're probably aware, erupted a few days ago. That eruption seems to have died down a little bit, but there is an awful lot of volcanic activity happening in Italy. And I can tell you that there are a number of very active volcanoes that are starting to show signs of growing, and you don't want one of these volcanoes growing, but Mount Etna is certainly growing, so they're expecting another eruption from her. And there are, and as I say, a number of others, both in Italy. There's another in Greece, and as we mentioned in last night's show, there have been earthquakes happening in Turkey. There are also significant, what they call geological tremors happening in Idaho, and these are swarm tremors. Now, if you're not familiar with an American map, I probably should have got one up to show you, but where these swarms are happening is about 250, 300 miles from Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone National Park is a known supervolcano, and there is evidence inside the park that things are happening. They've got a number of the geysers that you're able to go and have a look at are actually closed at the moment. They're too dangerous to go near. There's a lot of ground instability and all that sort of thing. So if that were to go up, then, well, that would prove pretty interesting. It wouldn't need to be Yellowstone, though. That would be a cataclysmic event. There has been a very large eruption in America's history that I remember, and that is Mount St. Helens. They watched that mountain grow for days before the whole side of it blew out. They are watching it grow again today. So if you know people in those areas, I'd be suggesting, I don't know what the mainstream media are telling them, but there is a lot of activity happening in underground, geologically, right around the world at the moment. The Pacific Ring of Fire isn't being left out. At the moment, most of the activity seems to be happening in the Northern Hemisphere, and interestingly, a lot around the Mediterranean. And then, of course, there's the whole Russia-Ukraine thing, which we'll get into in another night. Tonight, we're going to talk about a subject that I've certainly never canvassed publicly before. I've been down an awful lot of rabbit holes and done an awful lot of research. But tonight will mark the first time that I get to speak with a survivor. Now, this survivor in particular, I've watched a number of her videos on Rumble over the last 4 or 5 days. And in my first email communication to her, I described her almost as a Spartan, or as a Spartan, in some of the actions that she's been through and she takes today. She is an extremely powerful and strong woman, considering what she's been through, and you're about to hear a lot about that. Would you please make welcome to the Voice of Freedom, Rachel Vaughan, and joining us tonight, somebody who you ordinarily wouldn't see in this sort of guise, but helping me plow our way through this, because we both have a bit of an interest in the satanic depths of Canberra, Cass Smith, who is a lifetime resident of that shithole, that place. So welcome, ladies. Thank you very much for coming in tonight. And Rachel, can I just start with you? Could you please give us a bit of a background? Why is Rachel Vaughan known for satanic ritual abuse and MK Ultra processing?
Well, thank you for having me on, Carl and Cass, and thank you for shining a light on a very difficult subject, because very few people want to actually share this sort of information on their platforms, which is understandable. So the reason that I'm known for this is because I grew up in a satanic cult. My father was an ASIO operative, although he had a normal, quite an amusing normal job when you really think about it. He was a line tapper for Telecom, now known as Telstra. So his job was to listen in on people's phone calls, and he would just go around telling people that's what he did, because it's what he did. But in the background, he was actually an ASIO operative. Now, the reason he had that position is because he was a very high-level Freemason. So my father's grandfather, my great-grandfather, was a man called Joseph Wright. Wright means Mason. My maiden name, my father's surname, was McIntyre, which means son of a Mason. So the Wright name and the McIntyre name coming together was very significant. And we actually go back to the Kennedy line, which is one of the Illuminati 13 bloodline families that supposedly run the world. And you hear about there's another shadow group, and there's probably some that we'll never hear about as well. So that pedigree, as much as I'm ashamed of it, was what allowed my father to have, to be able to avoid prosecution for all of his life up until I had him investigated, and then he died 6 weeks later, which is interesting. He had, the ability to avoid prosecution for multiple murders, some of them very high profile. So some of those include the 3 Beaumont children, Jane, Anna and Grant. Jane was 9, Anna was 5 and Grant was 4. Or sorry, I think Anna was 7 and Grant was 4. Tracy Louise Bell, often known as Louise Bell, who disappeared from South Australia in 1983, and Richard Kelvin. These are all children that my father was involved with. Many state wards. So my father was involved with the family, which are a group of men known to have abused and murdered, tortured, horrible, and left out to be found, a group of boys and men. I mean, there were countless young boys and men who went missing during that time, who've never been found, and who were also kidnapped and abused, drugged and the rest of it, who survived it and never came forward. But there was an inquiry into all of that, and many of the abuses that have happened in South Australia, called the Mulligan Inquiry, which started in 2007.
Now that name alone is... I've heard your explanation in another video. Can we just explain the Mulligan Inquiry and why it means so much?
So South Australia is known for a lot of missing children. So it's not just the 600 odd that was spoken about in the Mulligan Inquiry. And I've heard as high as 900. You can't get much detail on that inquiry because there's a suppression order on it. But there was also 4,000 children sent over from the UK to Australia, and 2,000 of those have never been heard of again. So the Mulligan Inquiry, overseen by Edward Mulligan QC, known as Ted, was to compile all of the allegations of people who've been abused in institutions in South Australia, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond. And it all came to a head in 2007. Now, I believe somebody else brought this to my attention. Obviously, they did. I didn't know anything about golf, so I can't remember who the person was. I'd love to give them credit. Some intelligent person came forward and said to me, "Do I know what having a mulligan is as a golfing term?" I had no idea. I looked it up. So it's when you're playing a game of golf and you want to wipe the slate clean and start again. And that's what that inquiry was all about. So they basically took all of the allegations, put it under a suppression order, from my understanding, and there's contention of whether it's 80 years or 90 years, who cares? It's a long time. Our ex-Attorney General Michael Atkinson and ex-head Prime Minister of South Australia, Prime Minister of Australia, John Howard, signed off on that one. So that's pretty disturbing. And that suppression order is what's preventing the remains of the Beaumont children that my father was involved with disappearing and murdering and then hiding their remains. They're buried in a sinkhole on my father's property at Stansbury in the Yorke Peninsula, McIntyre Place. He was sure to have it named that way before he died. They can't be dug up, according to a major crime department detective who told this to my brother, Andrew McIntyre, last year. They can't dig them up because of the suppression order, because it's not just the 3 Beaumont children in that well. There's 3 state wards as well. The suppression order on the Mulligan Inquiry, the terms of reference of the Mulligan Inquiry had nothing to do with children who had parents. These were all institutionalised children, orphans, people in institutions. The Beaumont children weren't in an institution when they disappeared. They had parents.
Yeah.
So it's a very convoluted mess. In amongst all of that, tunnels and bunkers and underground edifices that I was trafficked through as a child. Tracy Louise, people don't know her first name is Tracy, but it is. She was used in that as a honeypot in that period. And what's also very interesting is the man who's a patsy for her murder. I saw my father murder her. That happened in front of me. The patsy for that is a guy called Dieter Fennick. His home, Holy Rise, was just off Honey Pot Road. Now, there are so many name correlations with this. So she was used as a honeypot. I was being used as a honeypot. My father used a lot of state wards as honeypots, and he was a blackmail operative. That's what he did. And that's
How
why
old
I've
were you
called
when
him.
this was happening?
Well, the tunnel stuff started, I have a memory when I was about 3 of being stuffed into one of the adjunct water tunnels, and he would block that off and I'd be stuck in there. So it started early, and I believe it kept going until I was at least 14. I didn't get away from him properly until I was 16.
What level of awareness did you have during those years of what was happening to you?
There were always things that I couldn't forget. Now, when you've been really severely traumatized, you want to forget because it's just too horrific. And this is why people split off into alter parts. It's a very convoluted process. He would murder my pets. I never got to remember that. Forget that. So, he would specifically, one particular guinea pig, for instance, he broke its neck. It's pretty obvious the neck was broken. And I'd seen enough of that as a child, people and animals, to know when a neck is broken. But then he put a branch of a tree over it to make it look like the guinea pig had eaten something poisonous. There were times where he would, at one point, I'd been programmed to go and kiss him goodnight. I didn't want anything to do with him. I didn't want to touch him, but that was the programming. So I kissed him goodnight when I was about 14. And he proceeded to tell me that his partner at the time had told him that it was completely normal for a father to be attracted to his children. And then I ran off to my bedroom and pushed the cupboard up against the door. And because I did that, he couldn't do the normal thing that he would do, abuse me, and then program me to forget. And that process, so my abuse wasn't just trafficking. It wasn't just being used in honeypot operations. I was used in child rape material. I was forced to witness murders. I was forced to witness ritual satanic abuse, many, many rituals. And I was also under MK Ultra programming and mind control. So I was used from a very young age as a psychic. Children are just naturally psychic, but the Freemasons have particular rituals and things that they do to children to supposedly open them up. And it's quite horrific. But I was also used in medical experimentation. So, and a lot of the state wards that went missing also were used in medical experimentation and disappeared through that process.
Cass, have you got anything you want to throw in at this point? Oh, you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I'm a little bit blown away already by the things Rachel has said, which is, just absolutely amazing. But yeah, I did have a lot of questions for you, Rachel. Obviously, we'll just keep exposing your background and talking about what you went through. But most of what you went through, I believe, was in Adelaide. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and you have a deep knowledge of the background of Adelaide. And do you want to explain a bit about that? I've heard it on other videos. So just briefly, what is Adelaide and what is the connection to Adelaide?
Well, Adelaide, if you've ever heard of the Adelaide Club, it's a club where it's on North Terrace. It's just down from the Grand Masonic Hall on North Terrace in Adelaide. The Adelaide Club is for the uber rich and uber powerful and the pedigree family members in Adelaide. Adelaide was founded on, we weren't convicts, but it was basically founded by Masons. So, and this is their little enclave. They've kept the population small for a reason. And the mind control here is off the charts. Obviously, it is also in Canberra. Sydney is known for the MK Ultra that they meet out. Victoria's had massive. I mean, I'm only laughing because it just seems so ridiculous to me that it's so obvious. Part of my ability to tolerate and cope and speak about these things is I do have a very good sense of humour. It's just a little macabre at times. Victoria, obviously, over the last 4 years has had a horrific, MK Ultra program meted out on them. I mean, people being shot at with rubber bullets when they were standing around a shrine. I mean, wow. So Adelaide, one of the things that makes me laugh is if the police, and I don't even think it's just the police that are the problem, it's obviously the politicians as well in these suppression orders, because we've had this good major crime detective tell us that they can't dig for these children's remains because of that suppression order. I was blaming the police for a very, very long time. What really makes me laugh is I've had so much pushback for daring to speak out. And I started making allegations officially in 2006. I have 2 siblings who've made allegations also. We all went through very similar abuse. They are both very intelligent, well-spoken individuals, no criminal background. We're not, you know, dodgy people, apart from our genetics. We just didn't get anywhere, and we got so much pushback. And the pushback's actually what's given me the impetus to do a lot of research. So when I was trying to, I spoke out in an interview to the ITNJ, International Tribunal for Natural Justice, in 2018, and my brother Andrew McIntyre did as well. What I exposed in that interview was the fact that I had been used and trafficked through these tunnels. Now, the council, Marianne Council, refuted their existence, and so I had to do a great deal of research to find out exactly what those tunnels were. So one thing I've been able to make very clear is that there are walkable Telstra tunnels on every main street and every main road of Australia. Now, they are, you know, if you go down any street and you'll see 4 metal plates on the ground. If there's 4, usually there's a pit about 6 feet deep, 1 to 2 meters wide. It's walkable tunnel, and they go for miles. Some of them are closed at each end of the pit. Many are not. And you can travel long distances. And if you think about every main street and every main road, people ignore them because it's just under your feet. You see it every day. Why would you pay any attention? So that's where a lot of contraband and a lot of children get trafficked through. I know, because I had to go through it. There were other tunnels in the area, ones that went from my childhood home on Mackland Street in Edwardstown all the way to the Naldera Street where the Glandore Boys Home was. Now, that tunnel had a group of buildings in between businesses that I don't even want to mention too much about what was going on in there, but these children were abused and processed, either on my father's property or in one of these buildings. There's actually the hull of a ship in the Glandore, at the old Glandore Boys Home. It's now a home for disadvantaged individuals who've, you know, got physical problems, which is still a concern. Yeah. There's a ship's hull underground in those grounds called the Hulk. Now, they used to moor the Hulk about 1.5 k's off Largs Bay and kept 100 children in there until so many of them died they had to bring them back to the home. You know, when you're out in the water, no one can hear you screaming. Yeah, they eventually put the hull of the ship underground. Now, the reason they did that didn't make much sense to me. I was doing this research. I went there. I spoke to a woman behind the counter. I said, do you have any underground edifices? Because my father had told me so much about what was underground there. She said, do you mean the ship? And I'm thinking, I was thinking about a cellar, but I didn't ask. She showed me the history room, and that's where I found all the information. But the reason they would have a hull of a ship in the grounds underground is because under maritime law, sex with children is legal, even if the ship is in dry dock, meaning even if it's on land. And you've got a hidden ship. Now, I've already exposed this. There's a video on my Rumble and BitChute channels on the Glandore Boys Home. Cardinal Pell was known to visit that particular home. There's a man called Richard Simmons who was brave enough to speak out about it. He said that it was a den of pedophiles. Others have made allegations that child rape material was being procured there. I know that because my father was procuring child rape material with me and others, including Richard Kelvin and Louise Bell, under our property.
Yeah, it's just amazing. The depth of this just goes to so many different levels. So when you mentioned Cardinal Pell, did you have much interaction with anything to do with the Catholic Church and the pedophilia that runs absolutely rife through that organisation?
And it does run rife. Personally,
yeah.
No
and in Adelaide particularly, there is a couple of orders. I don't think it's any secret to mention either the Dominicans or the Black Friars, who have had members been exposed in more than one inquiry into pedophilia and other actions that these people have taken against children in their care.
Yeah, so a bit more on that. One particular one, Dr. Father Davis, and that's initially what I was inquiring with you, Rachel, is that he was in Adelaide. Dr. Father Davis, there's a current affairs show on him. He's a known pedophile. He was in the Royal Commission for the Catholic Church, abuse against children. He was in Adelaide, and then obviously he got exposed in some way. But instead of dismissing him or taking any action against him, they just transferred him to Canberra, where he became the lead priest in the church and the school that I went to.
Wow.
And so there was a court case going, at least 17 charges against him before he mysteriously died. So
it happens.
He never got brought to justice, but he got transferred between Adelaide and Victoria and Goulburn and Canberra. They just don't bring these people to justice. They just transfer them around.
Yeah. And it's not just because they're pedophiles protecting pedophiles. These are tools. So when you've got someone who's in a position of power like that, and it's spiritual power, abusing children, the children that get abused are so traumatized, they are sitting ducks for anybody else. They keep dossiers on each child and where they're available, and they push them around. They send them to the scouts. They make sure those children spend as much time as possible in whatever circles they want to share them in. So it's a very powerful tool, and it's a spiritual tool. And, a lot of people don't understand the spiritual aspect of what is happening with the child abuse in this state. It is so convoluted. It's not just physical pleasure. It's not just a power thing. It's not just because these people are sick. It's because they get this spiritual power from abusing children. It's full on.
And that in hand with the adrenochrome and the ritual part, like the purely, deeply satanic part, the people in robes with knives and altars. I'm staggered by what you're saying to me, but Rachel, I want to go back to something you mentioned, and I know I've heard you speak about in other podcasts. You're very, very certain that the Beaumonts are buried on your father's property. Well, who owns that property these days? Do you know?
Well, I was careful not to name them for a long time, but it's all come out in the local paper this year. So they tried to dig at this place called Castelloy Factory. It's the third time they did it. It was ridiculous. They moved mountains of soil, found nothing. Nobody was going to find anything there, and they knew that. I think they were just trying to make a big deal to make sure that, let's put it to, 60-year anniversary in January next year. Let's just put it to rest because we haven't found them. Well, no, instead they had a big furor and a lot of people saying dig at Stansbury. I'm certain of them being there. My brother is certain because Andrew McIntyre was abused by Anthony Munro. He had Anthony Munro put away. Munro's on his third conviction. That's one of 3 of my father's very close friends who are convicted pedophiles. There's so much evidence, and I don't know if you've seen some of the evidence that I've put out. There is no other person of interest who has anything like the evidence that they're sitting there against my father and Munro. Nothing like it. So it's all about...
You believe you saw the Beaumont children?
I didn't. I was born in 73 and they disappeared in 66. So my sister, well, actually 2 of my sisters saw them in the boot of a car outside our Macklin Street property, the one I mentioned earlier in Edwardstown, on the day they went missing. Now, one of those sisters is now dead because she made an appointment with the Major Crime Department and was found dead the next day with a broken neck. She supposedly broke her own neck sitting down with a sash cord. So that was in 2009. So Claire's been deceased since then.
That's your own sister, Rachel.
Yes. And her daughter supposedly hung herself in December on the solstice last year. I mean, when have you ever heard 2 women, 2 generations doing that? Now, to hang a person is this happened to the Major Crime Department head, Doug Barr, in 2019 as well. He was hung in his closet. So when you speak out of turn against the Masons, that's the number one way they'll make you go is through hanging. Yeah, but they're not actually hanging, obviously. They've been offed. One thing I just wanted to mention as well, I tried to see my father's corpse after he died because, again, I made these allegations. I'd seen so many members of Parliament and done so much work to actually have him investigated, found the right MP. Finally, they investigated him. Within 6 weeks, he was dead. But I wasn't allowed to see his corpse. So I don't even know, if he'd just been shipped off somewhere. The person, there was so much stonewalling and so many blocks I just wasn't allowed to see. I want to see for myself.
Rachel, do you fear for your life?
I used to, but I'm still here. I've done a lot to expose this stuff. I mean, I put out a video a couple of weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago, exposing all the symbolism and the main ley line alignments, and it's so painfully obvious. I mean, you can't not see it. What's fascinating is Victoria Square looks like a massive eye, not a humanoid eye either, a different kind of eye. And there's an epitaph on Light Square, Colonel William Light, which, if you look at it, William, will I am, the will of God, light, Lucifer. There's so much Luciferian symbolism in Adelaide. On his epitaph in Light Square is a statement, it'll be up to posterity to work out whether or not my plan for Adelaide, because he was the Surveyor General of Adelaide, whether I'm to blame or to praise for what I've done to Adelaide, basically. So I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have the exact statement, but it's just mind-blowing. So I put that presentation out. Some wonderful person who'd been at the presentation evening showed me this immediately afterwards, and it was just that beautiful little last bit that tied it all together.
I think it would be wonderful for us to run a whole show on the symbolism of Adelaide and the symbolism of Canberra and the other states as well. Rachel sent me a whole lot of photos on Canberra and the symbology there, and it's mind-blowing. You just look at it, go, wow. But we can't.
Well, I believe the National Museum and potentially the library might be very interesting places to visit once you know what you're looking for. And I just as we were going to air, I thought, first of all, I thought, oh my God, how bad is this? And then I thought, well, this is an idea of the symbology. And as much as I hate this because they're my favorite band, I'm wearing a Pink Floyd shirt which has the bloody pyramid on it and everything else. Now, Pink Floyd's my favorite.
I've got the pictures Rachel sent me today, which I can bring up if we've got time. But the symbology of the construction of Parliament House and the Parliamentary Square, and then the connection to Old Parliament House and the Old Museum. It's just, I mean, anyone that's in Canberra is aware of all of this. But I think putting it together in a show would be absolutely fantastic. Excuse my dog, please. One question I had for you, though, Rachel, is when did you first start speaking out? What age were you when you went, oh my God, all this has happened to me, I should talk about it? What age were you?
I tried to tell a teacher, I basically told a teacher about Louise Bell being kept under the house. This was after it had all happened, when I was about 10. She took me up to the principal and I shut up after that. There was another time when I was about 11 where a guy tried to pick me up in his car that I believe was Graham Bennett Fraser. I've named the vehicle. It's a very unusual vehicle. And I've worked out that was his. Graham Bennett Fraser is an ex-chief inspector of police who has been done. He's a convicted pedophile, but unfortunately my allegations against him aren't getting any air because he was blackmailed by my father using Richard Kelvin, who's a missing and deceased child from the family murder, who's a family murder victim. And he was also filmed with Louise Bell. So again, my father used her as a honeypot to destroy Graham Bennett Fraser, Chief Inspector of Police. I guess my father was just mucking around because he could. But he even left her earrings on the corner of Doctors and South Road, equidistant to Graham Street and Maxwell Street, my father's name being Maxwell. The convolution, and her name meant a lot to him. Bell, Graham Bell created the phone. He was a telecommunications officer. He had a telecommunications bunker. Tracy, tracing calls. It all in lieu of me, he killed her instead of me. I mean, it was all so complicated, and this is what a serial killer does. Everything has a meaning and a reason. I'm sorry, I've gone on a tangent and I've forgotten your question.
So the question was, when you first started speaking out.
So there were times all through.
You're like, you're crazy. What are you talking about? You're lying. You're making it up. What happened when you first started talking?
My experience is quite typical to what happens to a lot of people who go through this process. When I first started remembering my childhood memories, they were not chronological. They were in relation to the depth of horror. But one of my first memories that came up was being medically experimented on. With that, so that memory came up in 2006. That jogged my sister's memory, that then my brother started to remember some things. Or there were things that he had always known but hadn't spoken out about. Boys very rarely, or men will very rarely speak up about their abuse. So the statistics on how many boys have been abused in Australia and how many girls, it's not clear. So I did try to speak up about it previously, got knocked back, or in certain situations it was not possible to go any further. When I started to do it officially, the police were very, very damning. Very abusive. Crime Stoppers, which is a private organisation, it's not owned by the government, it's a buffer that the police don't want these cold case allegations to come through. And very clear evidence of that was our chief police officer, Grant Stevens, went public not that long ago with Edward Mulligan Inquiry, QC's son Stephen Mulligan standing behind him looking very, very angry. And Grant Stevens warned the people that are looking up the evidence for the Oval abduction children at the moment and said that they shouldn't be doing that because that might upset the family.
Just point out who young Mulligan is in South Australia, can you?
So Stephen Mulligan, I believe he's now the treasurer. I think he's gone up to that high level. He's had some very high level positions, infrastructure as well. He was doing infrastructure. Yeah.
So there is still a Mulligan eye casting over the Mulligan investigation.
Yeah, and to have him in the background while Grant Stevens was issuing this warning, and it was a family member of one of the Oval abduction children that was actually speaking out, that's Susie Ratcliffe.
Yep.
She has a right to do that. He wasn't talking about their families. He was talking about the family. So, and that was painfully obvious to anybody who knows what's going on. So
you had the support of your brother and sister when you spoke out because they were also remembering. That must have been helpful to you in that people couldn't look at you and just say you're crazy for saying any of this.
Oh, they still did.
Yeah.
They still did.
So the brother and sister collaborating.
Yeah, so it's really rare for siblings to come out and speak about their abuses. Most pedophiles will make sure that they don't abuse all of their children. My father just abused them all. And there's a couple that say they weren't abused, but they were. So the abuse was disbelief, cognitive dissonance from a lot of people. But like I said, my abuse came up, it was horrible at first, the memories that were coming up, but nowhere near as horrific as the ones that came up later. So I didn't come out with, oh my God, I saw horrible things in rituals when I first started speaking out. I was talking about my father sexually abusing me. Mm. And even then, as soon as I started to make allegations, the South Australian police were damning. One of them suggested I meet him in a car park at Christie's Beach Police Station, in the car park. My lawyer said, do not meet that man in the car park. I had the Police Complaints Authority were abusive. Oh my gosh, there's so many names. But most of the major crime department were horrific to deal with, including Doug Barr, who's now dead. Absolute abuse, derision. I had major crime interviews regarding Louise Bell. They tried to tell me I was crazy, even though one of my family members accompanied me to tell them that something that I had witnessed, she had also witnessed, which is too horrific to mention. They still derided me and went after Dita Fennick. And it was very clear to me that the officers involved with that conviction were completely corrupt. And I've got a timeline and I've got evidence to prove it.
Absolutely. So that term you mentioned, cognitive dissonance, for those that don't know, I just pulled it up on Google because I know what it means, but to put it in context, Google says cognitive dissonance refers to mental discomfort that results from holding two conflicting beliefs, values, or attitudes. People tend to seek consistency in their attitudes to stop them feeling unpleasant feelings. Putting that in plain English, from what I understand, cognitive dissonance means that when you say this happened to me and people can't accept that or understand that or conceive that could be possible, they just dismiss it as it can't be real because it doesn't fit in with the way they see life. So even though you've been through certain things and you can say that and you remember that and you were there and you can perceive it and you can describe it, people just say, oh, no, that can't be true because it doesn't fit with their own intellectual concept of.
What do you mean people are walking around in the Telstra tunnels under our streets? Poppycock.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Exactly. So what about friends? How did you go with talking to just like people around you, people that I guess
were you allowed to have friends? Did you have girlfriends?
Yeah, did you have girlfriends? What did your friends say? Did they go? You go, okay, I was satanically abused as a child, and they would go, oh, okay, lovely. It's been great weather today, hasn't it? Or did they sit down and go, really? Can you tell us about it?
The vast majority of my friends are my friends because we don't talk about the weather. So, you know, they were pretty open-minded. School friends, I was careful who I brought home because I was always very protective of them. There was one particular school friend who was a close friend for a long time, which for some reason my father told me at one point that he didn't find her attractive. So I did bring her home and that was safe. For some reason, she wasn't his type. Thank God. But yeah, there were some that I was very nervous about bringing home and I didn't. And I'd go and stay at their house instead. In fact, there was one, Nina, and I've been in contact with her mum since she sadly passed away of an aneurysm in her adult life. But I used to go and stay at her house and I would just lose my mind over the window being left open and just cry and freak out. And then the mother they'd be like, what's wrong with you? And it's because I knew Louise Bell had been taken out of her room through the window. And my friend was sleeping right next to it, like her bed was literally next to it, and someone could have. And my concern was someone was going to take her because I loved her so much.
Yes. Yeah. So that brings up another question, Rachel. How did you cope with all of this? Like from what you've been through, and you haven't gone into too much detail, and we don't want to because we don't want to go into the depths of depravity and really disturb people's mental health. But with what you've been through, how did you survive? How did you live a normal life? How did you get to the age you're at as a reasonably normal person?
Yeah. Well, I was very lucky that I did bond with my mother. So with the MK Ultra programming, they do everything they can to destroy the mother bond for some reason. And that was destroyed between my mother and her other two children. But with me, it was still there. That kept me sane. My animals kept me sane, the ones that didn't get murdered. Being out in nature kept me sane, and my friends. And so I'm a very stubborn person. So it takes a lot to try and rub me out. And I really hated my father, and I really felt he was quite pathetic. I felt I was a much better person and very superior to him. So there was something in that kept me going. Yeah.
Yeah, you're very lucky, and we're very lucky to have you here with us and still talking about all of this with us. You also mentioned in your previous videos that your father was very high up in the Freemasons, and you mentioned that earlier today. I was actually wondering if anyone's interested in their own private family line, is there any way of finding out whether your bloodline is in the Freemasons or not?
So it's a little easier to find out grandparents, great-grandparents. Back in my great-grandparents' day, it was in his obituary because they were so proud of it. So it was Grand President of the Grand Lodge, Sons of Temperance Lodge as well, like really high level. Nowadays, it's harder. Yeah. I think they realise that they're on the end of their power trip. I would suggest going to, well, I was going to say lodges, but you don't want to go to the lodges. There might be ways of looking up, perhaps through the National Archives, something like that. I tried to find out, so apparently my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, was the head of the Eastern Star sect. And again, her father was apparently was the head of the Masons in the state or Australia. I can't remember which it was. But I've contacted them and they won't give me any details. But she was very high up in politics and business for a woman in a time where women weren't high up in politics or business. So it is difficult. Hiring a researcher, private detective, those sorts of things can work. But these things are pretty well hidden, unless you're looking at grandparents and great-grandparents.
Yeah, they're definitely well hidden. It's you know, they for people who say Freemasonry is innocent and it's just a boys' club and it's just like a grown man's scouts club. Why is it so secretive?
And why is it to the exclusion of all women?
Yeah, and why secretive? So
well,
I'm
because there is a female arm to Freemasonry.
Yeah.
And they run a very similar but different set of rituals, and they aren't known as Freemasons. A lot of them, I think, congregate in the CWA, I was told. So I don't even know if the CWA still exists, the Country Women's Association.
Rotary Lions Club.
Rotary Lions Club. Yep.
And I'm not saying they're bad people at all, but
no.
Once you get to a high enough level, that's where you get the power in those organisations.
So, Rachel, I'm a big believer in, I have to be a believer in it because otherwise I'd probably go crazy myself. But I'm a big believer in life path, and that people that have been through some bad things in life, that we were here for a purpose and we somehow sat up in a cloud and chose this life for a reason.
Yeah.
What reason do you think, if you're a believer in this belief, what reason do you think you chose this life path, and where is it leading? Where to from here?
I love that you mentioned that. I get shot down for saying this because there's an organisation called the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, which is
a lot of time looking at their videos, and I can't believe that the founder of the organisation set it up because her daughter brought allegations against her husband, and then she set up this whole organisation about the false memory syndromes.
It's just that vile.
I read that book when I was only 15, and
so the proponents of that particular, who are all pedophiles, by the way, that's because the whole group of them included, they say that, you know, people who are abused as children say that they're better for it. Now, I find that disgusting, but like you, I also have the belief, because I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor, I'm a thriver. Despite what happened, I am here doing what I believe I came here to do. So I believe I was born into this particular family, partly because I have a soul connection to my mother, partly because I wanted to clear this up. And I actually teach people through, you know, with your intent, you can be incredibly powerful. So there are self-affirmations that you can do to undo the generational curses that Freemasons place on their family line for people that aren't even born yet, because they get power from that in their current lifetime. It's pretty convoluted. Same with the military. The military, if you sign up to be a serviceman, and I'm not saying anything else against those people, I'm just saying they don't know that when they sign themselves up, they sign up their children and grandchildren for experimentation. So Freemasons believe in this. They believe that they have a right to do that to their family line. I believe I came in, I was taught about my psychic abilities, my psychic abilities were harnessed from a very early age. I now use those to keep myself alive, to help other people, to help them find their soul purpose. I also use them to, I can see ley lines. So it's a very simple technique. I've taught hundreds of people this technique. They can see them too. They're a magnetic frequency. They show themselves in nature as channels through tunnels through nature. Very, very, very obvious. And you can also find them through different ways of looking for church alignments and things like that. That's what I believe I survived for. It was to expose this stuff. It was to wake people up to it. But my higher purpose is actually talking about the things that I love. I don't like talking about my childhood at all. It's teaching people how to harness those abilities, because we live in a multidimensional existence with other entities, whether people want to believe that or not, cognitive dissonance or not. It's what it is. Those in these secret societies know all about it. They know how to put curses on people. They know how to use energy frequencies to harm people. We're just walking around dumbfounded. What amazes me is there's billions of people on this planet through all the various religions that all believe in demons. But in the Western world, it's all poppycock. So that people like myself, who are being abused by Masons, because in the Western world it's mostly Mason run, they don't want us to know about these things. So I teach people how to protect themselves, how to find ley lines. When we can actually find ley lines in nature, we can imbue them with beautiful, loving, happy frequencies by singing, tuning forks, sound bowls. And that undoes the damage that the Masons do with their structured ley line interference, which is about so many different things, power, hunger. Yeah.
So I think what you're saying is the more people that we can teach about these powers of putting love into the ley lines and raising our spiritual vibration, the more we can combat the evil that is permeating this world at the moment. And good always wins over evil. So it doesn't take too many good people to stand up to defeat the evil, because we are so much more powerful than they are.
Absolutely.
And if we can
100%.
spread this knowledge and teach more people and get more people to stand up and to combat this evil, even just with, I know saying love and light is getting a bit old now, but it's actually true in a way, isn't it?
It is in this particular circumstance. I would never suggest someone sends love and light to their perpetrator, because you're just recreating a cord. What I do suggest is you use that love and light in the ley lines, because that heals the earth.
Okay,
So,
that's a really, really good tip. I haven't thought of it that way. I've been told to like send love and light to the perpetrator, which is really, really, really hard to do.
Yeah.
Every time
it's really not recommended. It's really not recommended.
Work. But that what you say makes sense. Don't send love and light to the perpetrator. Send love and light into the ley lines to make this world a better place. And yeah, absolutely.
Rachel, you're starting a course. You offer courses on a regular basis. So the course that you're starting this Friday night is a psychic course. I'm very interested in learning more about being in touch with myself, and I have certain feelings and I get certain intuitions and all that sort of thing. I don't know whether or not I'm just an old woman in an old man's body getting female intuition, or there is something more to that. Is your course going to help someone like me?
100%. Yeah. So basically, what I offer is a whole series of different modalities that you can open up those abilities. Or a lot of people who do a psychic development course have something going on that they don't understand. So I explain, what these entities are, how they tend to present themselves, how you can protect yourself energetically from them, how you can access ley lines to meditate, or it's basically, you go into a ley line that's an akashic representation of all events that have ever occurred on Earth, all thoughts, all actions. And it's like plugging into internet, basically. Once you go into a ley line, you're immersed in that frequency. You can pick up information much more easily. I teach about how to clear the pineal gland, because we get fluoride and glyphosates and all this rubbish that makes it calcify, which means it doesn't work properly, which messes up your circadian rhythm and so many other things. So energetic protection, I'm teaching how to use divining rods now, how to read auras, which is not difficult, and most people can work that out as well. So there's a whole range of things. Also manifestation, if you can keep, and this is what's also kept me quite sane, is learning how to manifest. If you worry about things, if you constantly dwell on the negative, you can't manifest something positive. So I teach people how to turn off that negative voice in their head that might be programming, it might be conditioning, it might be someone on the news saying some rubbish, parents saying you'll never be able to achieve, greatness following a particular path. You need to switch that off and start to focus on what you actually want to create. And I teach how, different soul frequencies have different abilities as well. So some people who are very new souls, they might not have many psychic abilities. As you go up the levels, and we do this through multiple lifetimes, people are going up multiple levels in a short period of time at the moment, because we're going through such a major awakening shift. But as you get to higher and higher frequencies, more and more of those abilities open, like telekinesis and telepathy. So there's a lot to it.
How does somebody get into your course then? And maybe they can't get into this one straight away, but you offer them pretty regularly.
I do, yes. So I have one starting on Friday. If people want to jump on, there's still a few spaces open. So they just go to www.6thscience, so the number 6, thscience.com. There's an enrollment form there. So this one's starting on Friday night, and I have another one starting in August on a Saturday morning.
I might join the August one. I'm going away to Bali, so I can't do your current one, but in the future one. Just I don't know if Carl's trying to wrap us up on a light moment, but I wanted to go back to maybe one or two little bit dark issues. Have you heard of the MK Ultra program and how they deliberately induce multiple personalities?
Yeah. So I was part of that program.
And
So,
did that
and I know
happen to you?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of my earlier memories is my father holding me up, and they showed me these black and white cards. I still had a dummy in my mouth, so I was nonverbal, but I was pointing at the card that the person in the other room was looking at and getting a lot of praise, because I don't know if I was getting it right or not, or that part of the program was to tell me that I was getting it right. One of the programs that they would use was they would tell me I could do something, and I would do it. And then they'd tell me afterwards I couldn't do it. I hadn't done it before, but because I'd been told I could do it, I could do it. And we're talking some pretty freaky stuff. So it's the mind control came from the Nazi era, probably pre that as well. But the Nazis were known for it in the Second World War. Operation Matchbox and Operation Paperclip. In Paperclip, they were sent off to America. Matchbox, they were sent to Australia. And we had one of the main ones came over to Australia and did a lot of abuses. So, you know, there's so much of that was going on as well.
Wow, I might need to talk to you about more of that offline. I hadn't heard about that before.
No, that's the first I've heard of that too. I didn't realise. I understand that, well, a bit about Operation Matchbook in Australia, but I didn't realise there were high-level Nazis who got here.
No,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I also know a lot was done through the Australian National University in Canberra.
And Sydney Uni. Yeah.
Okay, so we can talk about that. So one last thing that might probably take up the last of our time was one of your other podcasts, you talked about the $1 billion state-run child abduction scheme. Probably can't exactly call it that, but like, do you want to explain more about, so like, I mean, obviously we've had child trafficking in Australia, many children going missing through the tunnels, pedophilia, all of that. What's happening right now?
So there is an industry in Australia that is worth $6 billion a year. That is the state-sanctioned child trafficking. So we had state-sanctioned child trafficking in the 50s and 60s through these orphanages, but people don't put children in orphanages anymore. They put them in foster care. There's a lot of money to be made from it, or they're put into care homes. 60% of the children taken is over psychological abuse, and yet many children die in state care, and they're 6 times more likely to be sexually abused in foster care. What is actually happening is this is the precursor to what Hillary Clinton was talking about, how a village raises a child. They don't want people to raise their own children. They don't have any control over that. They want children to be raised by the state. And so you will see, you would just be regaled with case after case after case, this terrible parent and that terrible parent. And people get a lot of money to work in these departments, stealing children from good, loving homes, because it makes a lot of money.
So what can we do about this? Like, this is happening right now.
Yeah.
And we have good Australians like us sitting here talking about it. What can the everyday Australian do about this?
Well, number one, when you hear of somebody having their children taken from them, and even if it's in some rubbish rag like The Advertiser, don't believe it. Think, what is the possible background story to this? If you ever hear about children like twins being taken from families, I guarantee you those children are going into some sort of experimentation program. They're obsessed with twins. Children being taken at birth for the most ridiculous reasons, like a woman who's got a diabetes diagnosis who might have had a can of Coke in her wastepaper basket that wasn't even hers. She's had her child taken. People having their children taken because they've declared gluten intolerant. 2 children taken from their parents in South Australia. 5 months later, they find out, oh, they actually are gluten intolerant, and they've been sexually abused whilst in care. So, you know, those children will never recover from that. The parents are suing. I don't know where that's going at the moment. It's gone quiet. That's just a very small example. Anyone who makes an allegation against a pedophile parent will have that child taken from them and given to the pedophile parent, because once the DCP knows that there's a child that's been that traumatized by their parent, they will blackmail the abusive parent and traffic the child. It makes enormous amounts of money. Never ever sign the yellow paper.
It's
If
so
anybody tries to take
important.
your child.
It's so important that we stand up against this issue. And I know there's so many people that will be watching this channel that this is like, we've had everything that's gone on over the last 3 to 4 years, which obviously we've all been against. But that's sort of over now, although probably coming back. You never know. But this is an ongoing issue that's been happening since the beginning of time. In fact, in the beginning of time, it was accepted in the ancient religions. It was pedophilia was just like that was what you did. But now in this common day, it's not accepted, but it just gets swept under the carpet and hidden and just goes on. So I'm really on a mission to do whatever I can to bring this issue to light. And I think, Rachel, people like yourself talking out is part of it, because when people like yourself talk out and start sharing about your experiences, I can imagine there'd be people out there that are still under the MK Ultra mind control and maybe don't even remember what they went through. So
something in this conversation may have triggered something inside someone here.
Exactly.
And if that is the case, please reach out for help.
The more people talk about this, the more people will be triggered and go, well, actually, I remember something about that in my past. So Carl and I have been talking about, and so we'll just put out there, if anyone has anything they want to talk about, if you could just email me to save cluttering up Carl's inbox. Carl, if you can put my email address in the chat with everybody, with the either my Freedom FFS email address or my Voice of Freedom email address, because I think we should have more chats like this. It will be on a different channel, on the Freedom Broadcasting Network channel, with myself, and anytime Rachel wants to join us. And I think if we could do another program on those ley lines and the different states and how that all pieces together.
Yes,
I think
I'm very interested in that.
Australia would probably find there's a whole pattern over the whole of Australia that links into all the patterns in the other states. So we have so much we could talk about. I think it would be really good if we start a whole channel on this series. And so anyone out there, it's not just if you have any memories or anything to say, but if you know anyone or concerned about a loved one or anything that you want to have a talk about, please get in contact with us. When they say like any mental health issue, reach out for help. So if anything in this has triggered anybody, please reach out, email me or Carl if you feel more comfortable, and we can talk to Rachel as well, and we can be part of your support crew to help you through this, because I know when I have spoken about certain things in my past, I just get told I'm crazy.
Yeah.
Don't talk about it. It's nuts. What are you talking about? You had a great childhood. Load of bullshit. Complete gaslighting. And so many other people would be going through that. So if you have had any experiences, anything you want to talk about, or anyone that you know that needs to talk to us, please email me and we'll have a chat. And if you want to get on a show like this and get your message out, because if we can put out more and more videos like this of people talking about their experiences, then that might just help people talk about it. And talking about it helps people heal. And then we can also then look at Rachel's programs about getting them to then throw that healing, because I do believe we're all here for a purpose. And the people that have been through these terrible experiences, we've got a lot to share with the world, and we were here for a reason. And if we can start getting that out there and raising the vibration and putting it into the ley lines and doing the things that Rachel's talking about to help heal this world, I think that's our purpose. And that gives anyone that's out there that has been through this sort of absolute trauma, it gives us a way forward. It gives us something to live for, because sometimes people just sit back and think, well, what am I here for? Why? This is just why am I here? Why did I have to go through this?
Yeah.
Why? But if you can have a hope that you are here for a reason, and that your abuse is there to help people.
Yeah.
Absolutely, darling. Absolutely. It's exactly what you're saying. And I hope you're not too inundated, but I think that's such a beautiful thing to offer. A lot of people don't, number one, they don't want to deal with it. Secondly, they don't want to put themselves out there to have people contact them. But I guarantee you'll get a lot of responses, because
it's also when these memories are hidden and people don't understand what the memories are and they start coming up. I know that, and you know as well, that the suppression orders, everything that comes out there, it gets suppressed. And there's court cases that Dr. Father Davis that ran my parish when I was a child. It went to court. He died. And now there's no information
resolution.
about what the allegations were. So nobody gets to have any healing or have any, oh my God, that happened to them. Oh my God, I remember that happened to me. So if he was a priest that was trafficked from so many different churches, there wasn't just 17 people he abused.
No.
There's probably thousands.
It's an average of at least 100.
And there's the only way to get out there is to talk about it more. So I do invite anyone that wants to talk about this to email me, and we'll be in touch, and hopefully we'll have more shows like this where people can talk out about what they went through.
And I encourage men to speak out. Rachel mentioned that it's very rare that men speak out in this circumstance, whether they feel embarrassed or humiliated, ashamed, or for a variety of other reasons. Maybe it's just too horrific to remember. I would encourage you, know that there are many blokes who are here to support you, and there is never any judgment in anything like this, regardless of your sex, male or female. But for men particularly, there is a brotherhood out there that will help you. All you need to do is reach out. So if you want to do that, then email me. It's pretty easy.
Beautiful.
Ladies, it's been a really deep subject tonight, and I don't think we've even scratched the surface of it. I think it's one of the most important topics, not just for Australians, but for humanity in general to move forward. We need to cleanse this world of this evil. And it is only through, Rachel, your stories and the stories of others like you, which are now proved true. We cannot doubt. The skepticism, there is no room for skepticism anymore. Right-thinking people who will view evidence dispassionately will always see what's happened to you and to others, and you will be supported. I can't thank you enough for speaking out and being strong enough to do it. It's why I said to you in our first email, I see you as a Spartan, and a Spartan female. And I've said the same to Cass. Cass is a fighter, and it's one of the things that drew me to Cass in our business relationship, because I've seen how she fights for things she's passionate for, and that empowers me, and I see it empowers many others around her. Rachel, I see you in exactly the same vein. I can't thank you enough for being you.
Well, thank you for being Spartan and having me on. I'm sure it's going to be interesting in the comments or whatever, although some of the comments coming in are really lovely.
That's right. I might be the most overweight Spartan in Spartan history, but trust me, I can pack a punch when I need to. Ladies, thank you very much. We will be in touch, Rachel. I would love to do your course. Unfortunately, I'm not going to Bali, and I would love to join you Friday night, but I can't because I'll be doing Guru's show on Friday night, and I do one at 6:30 myself. But I would also love to be part of your course in August. So,
that'd be lovely if you were both on in August, because you know each other, so you'd have more fun.
Yeah, well, she'll be on one side of the world and I'll be on the other, but it'll be, I find this course particularly, I've read up a bit about what it's about, and I'm drawn to it. I feel myself being drawn to have to do it. So, if I didn't have to do things I'd already booked in for Friday night, I'd be starting now. But unfortunately, I'll have to do Guru's show instead.
Well, enjoy Guru's show. I'm sure it'll be amazing.
Oh, it'll always be fun. Tim Dwyer will be on that too. Well, I'll let you ladies go, and I'll do a bit of cleanup on Tim Dwyer's behalf for him. So, Cass, thank you for coming on tonight, and I really hope we can do something going forward with a show on FBN potentially. Although I don't mind using the Voice of Freedom thing, I just don't want to be on everything. But I'm very happy to. I'm very happy to be involved and help in any way, shape, or form with this. For many years, I got myself in a lot of trouble hunting people who hurt children. And I still feel visceral hatred for these people, which could also get me in a great deal of trouble. But it is through the strength of people like both of you that people like me can see there is a future forward without killing the whole fucking world. that does this to you. So thank you very much for your strength. And both of you, thank you very much for tonight and giving of yourselves to us.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
And on that note, folks, I'll give you a bit of an update on what's happened with Tim. A lot of you have asked about his Zoom tonight. Now, he received close to 2,000 emails with suggestions, and a lot of people just saying, thanks, we agree with what you're doing, and yada, 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 and patting him on the head. Clearly, it's not really a workable solution to have 1,000 people in the room who've all got something to contribute, and Tim would be in his room for many hours for all that to happen. What he is doing tonight, and for those of you who haven't received a link to his Zoom, you're not going to receive one. He has invited a certain number of people, a manageable amount of people into the room tonight. And those questions, ideas, other things will be discussed and put forward. A lot of ideas that came into him were duplicated by many people. So if yours was one of those, then it might be lumped in under one person's name or put up under a group of questions that were asked by a group of people. These things, I'm led to believe, will be discussed tonight. And over the course of the next week or so, Tim will be putting together another presentation involving everything that was added in after tonight's Zoom. And you will all be invited again to go back in and view that, which I believe will happen next week. So if you haven't got the Zoom link for Tim Dwyer's Zoom tonight, then don't be too upset. Your idea, there's every chance, if you didn't get an invite, there is every chance your idea was also put forward by many other people. I know we all like to think we have original ideas, but sometimes we're all as smart as some other people. So that's probably ostensibly why I haven't bothered putting anything in, because I've never had an original thought in my life. I'd only be taking one of yours. So that's why I'm not in the meeting tonight. But hopefully next week we'll get to learn a little bit more about that. If you are interested, folks, in getting into Rachel's course, www.6science.com.au. I'm sure it was .com.au. Let me just try that and make sure I've got it right. Just .com. There you go. 6 cents, number 6 cents. In fact, I'll try and show it to you so you know what you're looking for. That's Rachel's website. And you can see that you can book a course up there on the left-hand side, but there is a great deal of information here on Rachel, and across the top, of course, you can find out a few more details. Thank you very much for your love, support, and attention tonight, folks. I know the subject matter is not comfortable sort of stuff, but I believe it is very important that we all hear the truth about what's happened to many young Australians, many children, and many of those children are now my age or approaching it. We want to hear your story. You are not forgotten. You are not forgotten, and people will fight for you. Be safe out there, folks. There are predators out there. Some of them are also dickheads on the road.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!